So this week was supposed to be a perfect MLS week, but unfortunately the Colorado Rapids basically ruined it. Because a couple of days ago when the Rapids announced that they are going to be postponing their next 3 games, one of their games was supposed to take place on Wednesday. And have not that game not been postponed on Wednesday, yeah, basically we would have had a perfect MLS week, and we would have had at least one game that is going to be happening every single day from this week. But that being said, we are still going to pretty much have at least one game that is going to be taking place every single day except for Wednesday. And we start off with the Monday game, which actually is going to be kicking off in about an hour and a half time. And that I do apologize that I am doing this preview on a bit of a short notice. But the first game I'm going to talk about is New England and the Philadelphia Union. And by the way, originally I was going to preview 4 games in this preview, and I was also going to talk about the Friday game, but then I realized the Friday game was New England versus Nashville, and I kind of don't want to talk about that one because it would be weird to kind of talk about the same team twice in a single preview, and also the compression and the way how that game would look could really be different depending on how both of these teams are going to do against their respective opponent early this week, and that it can really change in terms of how that game is going to be viewed a little bit later that day. So that's why I'm only going to be doing 3 games for this preview. And the first game, as I mentioned, I'm going to talk about is New England versus Philly, as this game is going to be kicking off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. New England has a 7-7-4 record, while Philly has a 10-5-3 record. The Ravs have won back-to-back game on the road, which is definitely great news for them, but the bad news for New England is that they are playing at home in this game. And we know that playing at home this season has been a real Achilles heel for this team, and hence that's why when I wrote on the key points, the first thing I obviously had to put on in terms of the key points for New England is that can they actually turn around their home woes. And if they're going to have to try to do that, they're going to be playing against one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, that it's the Philadelphia Union, who they're going to be disappointed that they drew 2-2 against a relatively weak and bottom feeder team, DC United, away, and that they are looking to try to get 3 points in this game so that they can, of course, keep pressure on TFC at the top of the East. And you notice I didn't write that Philly is looking to keep pressure on TFC in terms of the Supporters Shield standings, because it was just announced a couple of days ago that the Supporters Shield is not going to be awarded this year, which I'm actually going to make a video a little bit later, and actually after this review, kind of talking about the Supporters Shield, and that despite the fact that I've heard a lot of anger that is around the league from fans, coaches, and even players alike, the fact that the Supporters Shield is not awarded, I'm going to give my unpopular opinion of why I think it might be actually a good idea, the fact that the Supporters Shield was actually not going to be awarded this year. But still, they're looking to trying to keep pressure on TFC so that they can, of course, get that top spot, and they can basically get home field advantage throughout the entire playoff time when they're playing in the Eastern Conference. But either way, I'm going to say Philly is going to be the favorites in this, and I predict them to win in this game. I didn't put the prediction box in this preview because I kind of ran out of room, but I'm going to predict the Union is going to win in this game because, again, New England, for whatever reason, they tend to struggle on the road, and they're about to play against a Union side that they're going to be angry. The fact that they dropped points against DC, and that they're looking to try not to do it again in this game against New England, and knowing the fact that TFC have already won this weekend, they need to try to get a win in this one to keep pressure in terms of them at the top of the Eastern Conference. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is Nashville and FC Dallas. So this game is going to be kicking off tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, as Nashville is coming into this game with a 5-6-6 record, while Dallas has a 6-6-4 record. And this is unofficially the third meeting between both of these teams, and the third meeting in the non-invitational MLS is Back Cup. Now, I know that's actually not the official name of this matchup, but I kind of came up with that name because both of them did not participate in the MLS's Back tournament. And technically, the name is kind of a little bit misleading considering the fact that both of those teams did got invited in the MLS's back tournament, but unfortunately got kicked out because of the fact that they had some COVID outbreak to deal with between both of these teams. But still, this is the third meeting between this both team in the non-invitational MLS's back cup. For Nashville, they of course won the first meeting between both of these teams, and then they drew 0-0 in the second meeting. In fact, Nashville has actually got the only win and are the only team this season on the road to be able to beat Dallas, who so far this season they have been exceptional at home, besides the loss that they took against Nashville earlier this season. But the bad news is the road form is kind of the opposite. As Dallas, one of the key points that I immediately put is that can Dallas actually get points on the road, and that the road struggle, as it's been the case for the past couple of seasons, are once again showing, and kind of really is the reason that is holding back Dallas in terms of trying to challenge in terms of the top four spot in the Western Conference. Now, for Nashville, Will Kaditz, I think that's actually how you pronounce his name, because I've heard a different broadcaster actually pronounce his name a little bit different than I originally pronounced it. But as I said before, with some of these names that I sometimes mispronounce, I will eventually get it right once I hear how the broadcaster pronounced their name a couple of times, and eventually I would get it right at the end of the day. But as of now, I'm going to pronounce it as Kaditz. He is now going to be once again questioned to see whether or not if he's going to be making his debut in this game. It was announced last week that he was supposed to be set to make a debut against Sporting KC, and it did not happen. Instead, he was kind of an unused sub on the bench. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not if he's going to make his debut, and we shall see how good he's going to be with this Nashville team. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of expectation that's going to be put toward him because they did make him the third designated player, and they are really banking the fact that he is going to be the guy that is going to be fix the biggest problem that Nashville is having this season, which is goal scoring, as they are, I think, the second few goals. They are second in terms of the fewest goals that is scored so far this season in MLS. But last but not least, in terms of this preview, is none other than the Cascadia Derby, as this is going to be the fourth Cascadia Derby and the final Cascadia Derby, at least in the regular season this year, as this game is going to be on Thursday, which is going to kick off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, and this is also going to be on national television on FS1. Now, this is also going to be the battle of the top two teams in the top of the table Western Conference clash between both of these teams in the Cascadia Derby, as both of them are currently occupied the top two spot in the Western Conference, with Seattle currently in first place with a record of 9-4-4, while Portland has a record of 9-4-5, and that Seattle are on top of the Western Conference because they have a better goal differential, and also they have a game in hand over the Portland Timbers. Now, since this is the fourth Cascadia Derby, Portland has a chance to potentially win this year's series, as they were able to win 2 out of the first 3 Cascadia Derby. And that one thing that I also want to note is that it looks like there's going to be no Cascadia Cup that is going to be awarded this year. Originally, I thought that the Cascadia Cup was probably going to be awarded this year, and I know that in the MLS's back tournament they didn't really count it because it was just a kind of a special tournament, and that they don't feel like that is kind of that is kind of fair, the fact that they should include that in terms of the standings. Now, in terms of when the MLS's back tournament is over, I thought they're going to start counting again, but then they basically announced that they're not going to count the Cascadia Cup game or the Cascadia Derby game. That is not going to be play without fans. And actually, in other words, what they're basically saying is that any games that is not going to be playing without fans, they're not going to count that in terms of the Cascadia Cup standings. So, because of the fact that all these Cascadia Cup games are not played with fans in the standings, that is pretty much the reason why they are not going to counted, and hence, since all of these games we've seen is not going to be played with fans, and especially even one of these Cascadia team in the Cascadia Cup is actually playing in their rivals' home stadium for their home games. Hence, it also kind of makes sense why they are deciding not to count these games in terms of the Cascadia Cup, and that it's not going to be awarded this year. But that being said, I'm pretty sure if you ask any Seattle or Portland fans, they would still feel like the Cascadia Cup is still a thing, even though it's not going to be awarded. And you know, Timbers fans, they know that if they can win this game, they would definitely get the bragging rights against the Seattle Sounders. And in some way, I feel like they could potentially be favorites. And that if I had to pick who's going to win this game, I'm going to give the Timbers the edge in this one. Because while I think going into the key points in this game, the fact that, you know, in the last game, it seemed like they unfortunately had the old habits came back to them, where you know how earlier this season the Timbers tends to always struggle in the final 15 minute of the game, and also the final 15 in the first half, and give up tons of goals. Well, even though they kind of fixed that a little bit in the last 6 games, the last one, it came back. Like, their old habits of conceding late in the game came back as they concede a late goal to draw 1-1 against LAFC. Hopefully that is just going to be a blip, and the fact that they don't have this old habits before of them conceding goals late in the game. Because besides that, one thing that I will say the Timbers will have an advantage over the Sounders is that it seems like going forward in terms of the form for both of these teams, the Timbers seems to be in much better form, and the attack definitely is in favor of the Timbers. Because for the Seattle Sounders, you know, originally when I saw that Ruidíaz is going to be departing on international duty, and I originally thought that, well, it is definitely a loss for the Seattle Sounders. I didn't think it was going to be as big of a loss, considering they still have some good pieces on their team and still have the big three known as Jordan Morris, Nico Ladero, and also Christian Roldan as the guy that is going to score them the goals. And in these last 3 games, yeah, that has been a problem. I mean, it's the last couple of games they have only scored 4 goals out of those 3 games without Ruidíaz. And the more that I kind of look with the way that they struggle in terms of the attack, the more I think maybe Ruidíaz might be a loss that it could be it might be more significant than we actually first thought. Because if Ruidíaz was in those 3 games, there's no doubt the Sounders would have been much better in terms of them scoring goals, and in terms of being much more lethal on the attack. And maybe because of the fact that, you know, defending opposition team that is trying to defend the Seattle Sounders, knowing the fact that they have one less player to worry about on the attack, maybe that's why they have been doing a much better job in terms of shutting down the Seattle Sounders defense. So yeah, for the Portland Timbers, again, I think they're going to be favorites coming into this game. And let's also not to mention the fact that the Timbers have not lost to the Seattle Sounders at CenturyLink Field in a couple of years now, and that they of course it all goes back to the trend, the fact that for whatever reason the Cascadia Derby always tends to be won by the away team, although it was kind of broken this year, and in the last meeting when the Timbers were able to win at home and become the first team to win at home in a Cascadia Derby in the last 6 meetings. But either way, this should be a very interesting matchup, and that I think whoever is going to win this game is definitely going to have momentum for the rest of the season, because as I said many times before, whoever wins this big derby always tends to go on a very good run at the latter part of the season. So yeah, we shall see who exactly is going to win this one, and also whoever wins this one will actually get outright in terms of the top spot in the Western Conference. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the preview of these 3 games. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these 3 games? And as always, let me know in the comments also your prediction in terms of these 3 games that is going to be happening. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I, of course, will see you guys next time.